We first met at the open house, and I noticed in his office that he had a bunch of country music posters, including Loretta Lynn and I believe maybe Waylon Jennings. I don't remember exactly who, but we struck up a conversation which led to him telling me about a podcast that I'm obsessed with right now, Cocaine and Rhinestones, and it felt like it was a conversation that we never really got to finish. You know what I'm saying? So I'm happy to kind of take it up and do it live. I'm so curious to know about the stuff that you have in your record collection. I mean, you were telling me off air your earliest recollections of listening to country music were really just as a little kid. You grew up with it, right? In the house?
Yes. My parents and my grandparents, both played it in the house. My granddad play guitar. His brothers would come over from time to time, and they would do little jam sessions that lasted through the night.
Where were you born?
I was born in Monterey, California. That's up north, but my parents and my grandparents all lived around the LA area.
Gotcha. Okay.
And go ahead.
And was there a big country scene? Because I'm discovering this for the first time. You see, what it is that made me want to talk to you in the first place it's just we connected so quickly on music. We talked about Joshua Headley, for example, and it turns out that Stoughton Printing actually made the jackets for the Joshua Headley records. And then it turns out that you're telling me that you appeared in the last Joshua Headley video along with Rob of Stoughton. So, for me, putting all of these little stories together, it's like, man, we got so much to talk about. But now it's like, was there really a lot of country music being played in California? Paint it out for me, because I'm a bumpkin from Canada. I can't, when I think of country music, I don't usually think about California.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with somebody, and they said, California country? I mean, are we forgetting that, Buck Owens, Merle Haggard were from California?
Okay.
The Palomino Club, that was North Hollywood. You got the Ranch Party. There was, and I've read a couple of books where it just named all these places, and it's like, it turned out like a place across the street from where I used to work.
Okay.
The place had a big horse on it. It was, and years and years ago in the 70s, it was a honky tonk. Okay. So they were around, and my grandma will tell me, oh, we went to see Porter Wagner at this place, and we went to see so-and-so at this place, and so it was here.
And your family was always basically steeped in country music. Okay, no, because I was just wondering, right? I mean, I'm talking about my own misconception. So when it is that you're telling me, that there was that, I'm instantly curious. For example, right? I did an LA dig recently when we met the first time, but I came predominantly for jazz and found it. If I was looking for country, I didn't go into the country bins at all, but if I was looking for country, are the country bins deep if you dig around like LA and Cali and where you're from?
I mean, it depends on the record store. I lived in San Francisco. There's a huge country scene in San Francisco, and that's kind of what pulled me in.
Okay.
Just a friend going, hey, you like country music. I have a friend that plays in a country band. And then I went and see him, and that was a guy named Tom Armstrong. Okay. And I was floored, because I had been trying to, start a band. Well, I got into my granddad's record collection in '93 when he passed away. Okay. And I just started going through it, and just kept on thinking, wouldn't it be great to have a country band like this? But nobody's really doing that.
This was '93, you said, right?
93, yeah.
Yeah, that's so achy breaky periods.
Yeah. So in 2000, I moved to San Francisco, and a friend said, hey, come to this band. And I was like, wow. I mean, I'd heard of Red Meat and Del Watson, but it really wasn't until that time where I saw Tom Armstrong, and I was just kind of floored. And then I kind of got sucked into the San Francisco scene and hanging out with all those bands. And we were only there for a few years, so I knew when I came back to LA that I would probably start a country band. And and I did come back, and I played a little bit, and with some friends playing bass on their music, their band. And one of my old drummers said, "You really need to play country music. Your voice just screams country music."
Yeah, you got a timbre to it. Well, the thing is look, I found that really cool too. It wasn't just a conversation, right? I wasn't expecting for you to get on stage and do your thing, because there was a band there. Country band, old style country music. It was great. And then Jerry gets up with his guitar and starts singing. Now, this band had played by themselves right before, right? And I enjoyed it. It was great. The guys were all like 6'5" minimum. They were fucking mountains. And then Jerry comes in. Jerry's fucking, look at him. Little Jerry the cowboy comes in. But he's got a little bit of the fucking Merle Haggard. Comes out with his guitar. Dude, I'm not kidding. When you opened your mouth, I said, holy fuck, man. This guy's voice is for real. I thought that your voice vocally was better than the band before that. I thought that you immediately added this dynamism. And I was floored by it. And that was it. I mean, it was obvious we had the conversation, but it was after I saw that. I'm there, no, wait a second. This guy gets it. I gotta have a conversation with him. And I'm always up to talk about all sorts of music. So one day it's metal, one day it's reggae, whatever. This is my first country music thing, And what's so exciting about it is I don't have a very deep country music collection. I actually looked through, I think I have 115 country records. And probably the reason for that, you know how it is that you were saying, Jerry, that like it started with your grandfather. So it's kind of like there's a family history that was there planted in you. And then later on you got sucked into it. In my case, I began associating country music with really hokey stuff. Okay. And, well, no, actually, it all started with American Top 40 for me. That gave me everything, okay? And as far as I knew, Billy from, Warner said that it wasn't everywhere, but I was really under the impression that American Top 40 can be had anywhere. So there were a lot of #1 songs, and we'd take car rides to the beach, and we'd listen to this stuff. So we'd hear from 10 o'clock to whatever, I think 1 or 2 o'clock, it was just the entire top 40, 10 songs per hour. Do you remember any of this? Were you somebody who listened to the American Top 40?
Well, not, a little bit, I guess. But, my dad was in the Army, so,
Gotcha.
I came back to the States. I was in Berlin, Germany. There was one military station.
I follow.
To it too much.
Wow, isn't that such a weird thing that there's this Canadian guy who's going to tell you about American Top 40 because you were off in Germany. That's a fun turn I wasn't expecting. But yeah, look, that's the way it is that I got into this. Now, early on, I think when you're young, you don't really know. You just listen to something and you like it or you don't like it. You don't put any idea into it. So a lot of early country music, my first actual country memory was this right here. I'm showing a copy of The Gambler. Just listening to those lyrics, even as a kid, even a kid can sing, you got to know when to hold them. When to fold them. You're supposed to be singing. Know when to walk away. Know when to run. And it was just a fun song to sing. And the American Top 40 introduced me to stuff like Dolly Parton, but it also introduced me to this really hokey type of country music like, The Gambler was good, but then all of a sudden he started singing Lady, and he started singing Islands in the Stream. This Kenny Rogers thing, right? Now,
I was waiting to get to Islands in the Stream.
You knew we had to get there, right? And Dolly's fucking 9 to 5ing. So, yeah. There's this whole thing that happens that it's just, at that age, I'm a metal kid. I'm not listening to any of this. So I already had this predisposition of country being pretty hokey. Okay? And the American Top 40 fed that to me. Then I'd turn on TV on a Saturday evening, and on a Saturday evening there was hee-haw. And I just wanted to watch the hockey game. But the hockey game, fucking hee-haw was always on. It was the news or it was hee-haw. I didn't like the news, so I watched hee-haw. And I got this woman with this little tag hanging off her head, Grandpa Jones, and I'm not able to understand any of it. It sounds so fucking hokey to me. But I'm watching it because Hockey Night in Canada, hockey's going to start pretty soon. And that was, and from there, right, we go right into the 90s where you're talking about, which is like fucking height of douche chills, fucking achy breaky, right?
Yep.
And that's kind of really, I mean, 93 takes me to 23 years old. I've just encapsulated the first 23 years of my knowledge of country music. Not very good. Right?
Yeah.
So,
well,
go ahead.
I mean, before I moved back here, I was playing metal. I was playing punk rock. And it was my granddad's record collection. And my parents got some of those Time Life greatest hits country music stuff, but they also got like the rock pop stuff. So I was listening to the Yardbirds and, you know, Otis Redding and stuff like that, you know, the top 60s type stuff. But then these country albums these CDs were laying around, and I put those on, and then I was just like, wow, this is great. Like, they have to have more songs like this on an album. You know, and I couldn't find any in my regular record store. I was getting just the greatest hits. And so I started there. And then I was like, there's got to be more stuff out there. And then that led me to going out to record stores and buying used records, you know, for, you know, Fair and Young records, because there was only 2 songs on these compilations or something.
But that's greatest hits are such an easy way to get into it, though, no? I mean, Fair and Young, I didn't know Fair and Young either, but it's exactly like you describe. I pick up a compilation and there's a Fair and Young song and there's a Tammy Wynette song. And then, suddenly you pick up something like the Fair and Young record that you have there and you learn another artist, and it just becomes this, such an amazing rabbit hole. And you know the link that made it for me, Jerry? I liked blues music, okay? So, I mean, I started off as a metalhead, eventually get into jazz and blues and everything, and then somehow it clicked. It was Hank 3, okay? So Hank Williams' grandson, who did a lot of punk and hardcore, that really made me understand country music and made me kind of understand it in a way that I understood it as a metalhead. I'm pretty sure you've heard the record Straight to Hell.
I have. I got it.
You've got it, right? And to me, that's a metal record. That displays everything. The same aggression, the same rawness, you know, just the same kick-ass attitude that any great rock and roll or metal record had. And the fact that he played hardcore music gave it a legitimacy, or just gave me a bit of a different angle to listen to it, so I paid attention. So there's the song Country Heroes, which I included on our mixtape. That song is basically what sent me into the world of country music. Like, he names the different musicians on it. You know the section I'm talking about?
I'm not sure. It's been a while since I listened to it.
Haggerty, is it? I can't sing it, but he starts naming a bunch of artists. He starts naming Merle Haggard. He starts naming Johnny Cash and Williams and so forth. And by naming those artists, I figure, you know what? If it's on a Hank Williams, if it's on a Hank 3 record, then these are probably the same type of artists who make the same type of country that Hank 3 is making. Surely, I wound up going back into all of this, and the 70s music did have exactly that element. And I discovered outlaw country. Only after, like, you know, after Hank 3 kind of, like, introduced it to me. Like, is that
so that's
weird?
when you started your country record collection, after Hank 3?
Yeah.
When that come out? Like 2005 or something?
Is that right? Yeah, that's about right. I mean,
somewhere there.
I mean, before that, I had some Johnny Cash, you know, but my vocabulary was nothing. It was absolutely nothing. And then, I mean, I always liked singers, okay? So somebody like Patsy Cline, I think, is a very easy crossover because she's got such a lovely voice, right? So that was there. But yeah, I guess when we look at it, that record, Hank 3, Straight to Hell is kind of what sent me on my country journey. So I guess it's not that old, eh? I shouldn't be doing a country show at all.
Well, I mean, I was the same way really until, you know, I found my granddad's record collection and started listening to those Time Life things, and it took, you know, 7 years or so, and then I moved to San Francisco, fell into that scene. Somebody took me to a Tom Armstrong show, and I had heard about Red Meat that was up there, and so I started going to see them. I had heard about Del Watson around the same time.
These are new guys?
These are new guys.
Okay.
And so, you know, the Derailers and the BR549 and, you know, Roger Wallace and things. And I just started getting into all this stuff. And it even though it's country, I still feel like it's got that hint of punk rock in it, you know, that hint of rebellion and, you know, all the same reasons I liked metal and punk rock and indie rock and stuff, you know. Well, it had that something that kind of sucked me in when I heard those guys. I'm like, absolutely. This is what I've wanting to do for 10 years, but I didn't know it existed. I thought if I went to a country show, there was just going to be, you know, Garth Brooks, you know, kind of bands and things. So
it took a long time.
Really got me into it. And then coming back to LA, I had to start a band, you know.
No, I get it. I mean, it took a little while for me to understand, to break through that wall of Garth Brooks. I mean, you're describing exactly my experience. And really, like, I mean, for me, Hank 3 was very much my gateway. But as I started collecting records, it's funny when it comes to vinyl, right? Because the records carry a mojo. Every record carries a story. Because it's a physical object, it carries mojo. I know, you know, people that don't collect records don't understand, but this actually, I'm holding up Satan is Real, and this is a Louvin Brothers record with a Stoughton tip-on jacket that was made at Stoughton. And I first heard about this record, and it was a vinyl, specifically vinyl, that made me look for it. There was a documentary. I'm not sure if you ever saw it. It's on YouTube, but there was a documentary on the vinyl. It wasn't the vinyl revival. Basically, it was just about people who collect vinyl. It was shot in Canada, I think Toronto, as a matter of fact. And they just interviewed a bunch of guys who collect records. It's over an hour long, but you can see really how crazy we are. And one of the things that I remember, you know, they're obsessive types. So when you watch a movie like Crumb, I'm sure you've seen Crumb, the movie.
Crumb, that sounds familiar.
Crumb, with Robert Crumb and his brother. Dude, you got to watch this movie, man. Especially if you like old-style blues. That guy, I mean, Robert Crumb's an obsessive collector of 78's blues, pre-war stuff. He's got tons of this old country music. Yeah. He owns acetates. They made a movie about him. And, you know, there you kind of start seeing, you know, record collectors. There's something a little off. There's something, there's this obsessive part of it, which, you know, I just gave into and enjoyed. But anyway, during this documentary I was talking about, I think it's called I Must Have That Record or something like that, but I will put it up on the website. There's this guy that just kept referencing the Louvin Brothers, Satan is Real. And he was obsessed with finding his copy of Satan is Real. And when you went beyond why it is that he wanted the record, the only reason he wanted the record is because it had a cool cover and because it was a hard thing to find. But it was the actual thing. It wasn't the music, it was the actual item. It was the actual artifact that interested him. And I mean, you know the cover, obviously. You have something there with it too. Do you have this record, Jerry? You do, eh?
I do.
There you go. Okay. So these guys were religious guys, and they are together probably the greatest harmonizers, or some of the greatest harmonizers in country music, no doubt. You know, during this podcast that you're the one who told me about, but I became obsessed with, he starts talking about blood harmony. You remember that part?
I do. And it talked about how you know, Ira had never well, he'd only had 3 years or so before Charlie was born.
Born, yeah.
So he'd only not heard Charlie's voice for 3 years, and Charlie has always heard Ira's voice.
Yeah.
So they've always, they were that close, and yeah, blood harmony. That's crazy. I'd never heard the term until the podcast.
Dude, he's so amazing. Basically, the idea is that these guys have lived hand in hand for so long, and they've sung together their entire life that they know each other almost telepathically, to the point where they know the way the other brother is going to sing before he actually does it, and they're able to react to it. So what happens is that you're creating this blood harmony, this synergy that's just, I mean, it can't be duplicated, right? It's almost kind of like twins, but in vocal form. So these guys were pretty deeply religious, and God really fucked with Ira, especially. He had a really bad temper. But what it is that he wanted to do is, because he was deeply religious, he was also very conflicted. So at one point he put in his head that, the idea of, there has to be something outside of God. That, like, the opposite of God is Satan. So when he made this record, okay, at this point they were signed to Capitol and they can only make religious records, but he decided to make this record, and he was a control freak, so they'd do take after take after take, and he did the same thing with the cover. He had an 18-foot Satan constructed, which is what you see on the cover, and they took that and put it in the middle of a quarry, a rock quarry. And in that rock quarry, they grabbed a bunch of kerosene-soaked tires, which they set fire to. And the Louvin brothers are right up there in the front of this fire. That's a real fucking dumpster fire happening in the background with an 18-foot Satan in the middle of it. So, I mean, when you tell me that it's just music, this cover is all the reason you need to go and buy the record.
Absolutely.
And then there's all the stories, of course.
Yeah. Me and my wife saw Charlie Louvin at a small club here in LA.
Oh, nice.
And it was during a rain thunderstorm. And in the middle of one of his songs, the lights go out. Power goes out. No amps, no nothing. And he just keeps on singing. Then everybody starts singing with him.
Oh, nice.
It was the amazing thing. And I got tears running down my eyes because I thought it was just so beautiful,
Sure.
And then we're leaving, and we got to meet him. He hit on my wife. She's cute. I mean,
Who can blame him? He's got good taste, right? Nah, look, those stories, man, I think that's where it is that I really began understanding country a little bit, or really began getting a deep appreciation of it. It dawned on me at one point that, well, I love black music and I love blues music, and I think it's roots, but at base, country music is white blues music. It's the blues, man. It's the same thing. The blues, whether it be black or white, if it's black, we can call it the blues. If it's white, we can certainly call it country. And it's all basically American folk music. And the best of these songs carry stories. And you think about the Woody Guthries and these types of things. And it's once it is that I started digging into that I began really developing an appreciation for the art form of country. Okay, which actually brings me to the record that you're seeing here, Gunfighter Ballads, Marty Robbins. I'm sure you have that one too.
Yep.
It's another one of those records where it's kind of like just the record cover by itself of him kind of like going for his 6-shooter sells it on its own with this really deep red cover from the back, really one of the very, very great covers. But a song like Big Iron really did it for me, because what he's doing, he's singing about killing somebody and telling the story in a pretty upbeat type of manner, but Pretty cool, man. He's telling the story of an outlaw, and it's once it is that I started seeing those stories that I became interested. The dirtier those stories got, the more interested I became, and that's where kind of like outlaw country came into the picture.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's your thing too.
Well, I mean, I like it, but you know, I'm not saying I don't, but but you know, like those back to the covers, you know, it was all about looking at an album and going like, this dude looks cool.
Oh
I
yeah,
got to have this record, you know? And this ends up being one of my favorite records. A song called Green Snakes on the Ceiling. I don't know what you got to drink or smoke to see green snakes on the ceiling, but it's a damn awesome song. And, you know, you just start, you know, going like, I want to know what this dude is singing, you know?
you know it's funny because Jim Reeves records can be found everywhere here in Canada. Okay, and here's where I have a little bit of trouble finding the country music because, and this is again one of the reasons why it's a genre that kind of buried me a little bit, because I'm not very into secular music. I mean, I like some secular music, but mostly it's because I like the artists. So I like Robeson, and I like Mahalia Jackson, and I like what the hell's her name, the other guitarist. I can't remember her name anymore, but I like him because I like the artists, that I like their music. You know, it has nothing to do with the Jesus element. Then I see a picture of Jim Reeves, and Jim Reeves played a lot of secular music, and it made me necessarily ignore a huge part of his non-secular catalog, which is amazing.
Yeah, I was going to say that if you're just doing the secular stuff, then there's a lot you're missing out on.
Oh no, not at all. What I'm saying is that it took me a long time before I understood and heard the non-secular stuff, because
Yeah.
I mean, from my digs, every time I look, it seems like 1 out of 2 Jim Reeves records is a Christian record. Okay, now that's not to disparage the music, but it's not, you know, it's face to one thing. It's not my thing. It's just not my thing.
Yeah.
It's
It's not really my thing either, and I don't own any of those records, but I've got 6 Jim Reeves records or so, and they're absolutely some of my favorite records.
Absolutely.
You know, if it wasn't for the song, you know, He'll Have to Go. Here's a little story for you. I had listened to this record that was in my granddad's collection, started playing the song He'll Have to Go. His guitar was going to be held by my uncle until I got back from, I was living in Berlin, Germany.
okay.
And it was thought to be lost for 16 years. Nobody could find it.
This is your grandfather's guitar, right?
Yep. He shows up with his guitar, and I open it up, and inside was handwritten lyrics to He'll Have to Go that my granddad had written so he could do the song.
That's pretty awesome.
It is. There was also typed lyrics from when my mom was 10 of Bobby Bear's 500 Miles from Home.
So this is basically your family's history that you found in that guitar and you had no idea.
It did. I mean, there was, you know, songbooks of Hank Williams and, you know, just a bunch of different, like, country ballad songs and things like that were in that case.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, you know. You carry on these traditions, and I think that's what it is. That's, man, these records. I wish most of these records, actually all of these records, were dug out in Montreal, and I would assume that we don't have the greatest country bins here. You know, we're up north. Man, what I wouldn't give to come down south or just go around the Rust Belt, go to Nashville and really dig out the small labels. You know, I don't know very much about the small labels at all, and as far as I know, I mean, just generally in collecting, the small labels is where all the interesting stuff happens. I learned about the Starday label maybe 6 months ago, not longer than that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming that's something I should be digging into.
Yeah. There's some good stuff on the Stardate label. And then there was also a label called King, and they merged together at some point. But yeah, you know, the Stardate label had the biggest bluegrass collection from like the 50s and 60s. They had just put so much stuff out. But George Jones was on Star Day, Willie Nelson, Roger Miller, they all had stuff on Star Day. They also did a lot of gospel, which I know you're into secular music.
Well, look, it's not so much my thing, you know. It's like I lean towards the blues, I lean towards black music and jazz and everything. Now you throw Jesus on top of that, it's not. I like country for the ass kicking, and I really like I like the idea of cocaine and rhinestones. I like the idea of somebody singing about being a coal miner's daughter and being poor, and you know, singing to keep there's something about the vocal tradition that's very, very rich in country music, where you can kind of feel, just by listening to the stories, you can kind of, it takes you back in time a little bit. It takes you to that shack in Arkansas with 12 kids, and they're so good at telling the story that, you know, you have to respect that kind of songwriting.
Yeah, I mean, I think country music is songs of life, you know, love and love lost, and cheating, drinking, working for the man, you know, everything that goes with it.
Actually, it's funny because the one it is that I'm looking for, probably, there was one story that I had. I like concept albums. One of the reasons I like vinyl as much as I like it is because it kind of forces you to two sides, for example. I mean, there's 4-side records, yes, but for the most part, it was a side 1 and a side 2 for an album. So artists would work within those parameters, and some artists went one step further. Rather than just collecting the songs, what it is that they did is they also created concept albums around it. And I was always interested in concept albums, especially when they worked well. And one of the earliest ones that really struck home for me, I finally found that I had to dig through, is Jeannie C. Riley, Harper Valley PTA, which is basically a concept album that puts you right there in Harper Valley. And Jeannie C. Riley, as she's singing, tells you exactly what's going on in the neighborhood and the hypocrisy. She's a young, unwedded mom who basically is the scorn of the neighborhood because of it. And they talk about it. But in the song, she talks about all of the hypocrisy going on and who's fucking who and who's got a drinking problem and so forth. By the end of the record, you really get the feeling like you're in this little village that she lives, and you know everyone almost to the point where you know the house that they live. God damn, man, if you could do that over 2 sides, that's a pretty successful country music record, I would say.
Well, I mean, we're talking about Loretta Lynn, you know, coal miner's daughter. That's the same thing, you know.
Yeah, just she does it in one song. You know, it's just the songwriting really is, I think, the thing that catches you most. It speaks to a certain honesty, I guess. I mean, would I be wrong to really say it's white man blues? I mean, that's kind of the operating idea that I've had up to now. You know,
well, I mean, that's part of where it came from. You know, everything that came over, you know, on the boats from, you know, Ireland and England and Germany and, you know, all those places, and you mix that with you know, the black music that was happening, and you know, you get Jimmy Rogers, you know, you get the Carter family with all the stuff that they brought over on the boats, and you know.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of that music, the early music, was really almost, you know, a lot of these families came up as sharecroppers and just worked out in the fields, and this is the way it is that they had to just, you know, make a little bit of money. And it seems like music was really just one of those things that kept you occupied when you weren't working hard, or even while you're working hard, you're singing out there. You know, there's this entire tradition that is born of suffering that really speaks to me quite a bit. You know, it tells me, I mean, it's musical anthropology, really. It's musical anthropology. It allows you, if it's done well, it allows you to kind of almost travel to that place.
Definitely.
So that's it,
You know,
bro. That was
really?
I don't know. Whatever. What? Actually, you know what? You know what it is that I would like. Tell me about some of the new albums to come out. That's just something I think we should be covering. There's been so many new artists. Just as much as the '90s kind of pointed towards maybe, you know, music that we didn't connect to. It seems like a lot of the country music that's coming out now harkens back to the outlaw country, or harkens back to even before that, but basically the older traditions, you know. And I'm thinking about the Chris Stapletons, I'm thinking about the Joshua Headleys, or you know, Coulter Wall, but I can't say that I know very many of them. I mean, are there any that are coming out right now that you'd be able to suggest, you know, that's available on vinyl?
There isn't a lot on vinyl. And I'm hoping, you know, there's a great band called 1100 Springs, and I'm friends with them on Facebook, and they actually just asked their fans, hey, if we put out vinyl, would you buy it? Because they're unsure of doing it on vinyl. And I say yes. And I say, call me because I'd like to print your album covers. But Whitey Morgan is one of them.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of him.
He's putting out vinyl. J.P. Harris is also putting out on vinyl.
Coulter Wall is another one that I heard of. Shooter Jennings.
Dale Watson has a couple of albums out on vinyl. But there's not a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I looked up before we started talking and all the people that I like, and there's not a lot putting out on vinyl yet. So I'm hoping that will change.
Well, look, the fun part about it is that, I mean, at least here, the bins seem to be deep. I mean, it looks like a lot that there's a much bigger spotlight on country music, and I don't know, you know, because music is so available with streaming, it seems like when it comes to the vinyl thing, people looking for that qualitative experience, it seems maybe, I don't know, the feeling that I get about today's vinyl, the person who buys records and takes them home and stuff like that, it seems like today's generation's a lot more open to trying stuff that they didn't know before, or just crossing genres. It looks like the internet, as much as it's kind of like taken us away from a qualitative experience, on the other hand, it's also done something else. It's given us such an explosion of music. It's given us such an explosion of entertainment that's available immediately, that a lot of that stuff, I feel, has come together and has been melded in ways that we've never heard before. That's never a bad thing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm really hoping that more bands will put out vinyl. I'm hoping, you know, because every time I do buy MP3s every once in a while, and my soul dies a little bit when I do that.
No. I've committed to this format, and that's it. Whatever comes out from now, I'm not interested anymore. I'm not doing it again. I understand the format, and the format for me is because I'm able to sit down with the jacket and have an experience that involves as many of my senses as possible.
Yeah.
I'm not.
I find that when I buy an MP3 that I don't know anything about the band. I've got to go to their website. Hopefully they have something good up. I don't remember the song titles at all because I never, you know, there's no jacket to look at.
Correct.
There's no lyrics to look at.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case with me as well. It's just, you don't look at the art, you don't pay attention to it. But the thing is because there's the structure around it, right? That disappears. You can't see it. So when you pull out an album jacket, you have a front, you have a back. There's a certain design, there's a certain concept, there's a certain thought that goes into it. And when you're able to just take a JPEG and take one from the other, you don't put it together in the same way. You know, it's just that physical thing is really what drives the story home. But it's like I said, there's good to both, in my opinion, because the internet really made all this information and all this music available to us all the time. it also made us far more likely to listen to stuff that's maybe outside of what we usually listen to. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like...
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, when I was trying to get into country, and wanted to find out more about it, it was kind of hard because I didn't have YouTube and I didn't have Spotify and iTunes and all those things. I actually had to go to the record store and I'd just find a cool cover, and I would hope that when I took this home that it was going to be cool, But
you don't know. You're taking a chance.
You're taking a chance. And, now you get to sample everything. I mean, but when you see that, that's got to be cool, right?
On that jacket alone, man. You buy that on the jacket alone. The guy looks awesome, of course. But that's what but what it is that I'm saying is, again, and I may be off, it's just the impression that I'm getting, or maybe I'm just getting older and I'm the one who buys like that. It's like I'm interested in everything. But I get the feeling that people seem to be a lot more open to listening to stuff outside of the parameter. Those parameters aren't quite as rigid as I remember them to be when we grew up. I mean, you're 46, I'm 48, in the 70s and before and everything. It's kind of like this idea of, good music stopped existing when you graduated high school. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I know what you mean.
Yeah. Anyway, whatever. Maybe I'm just going on and on.
I don't want to be that person. I'm making myself not be that person. I'm trying to find new stuff all the time. Not just in country, but anything that just moves me,
Yeah. I long contend, dude, it's always the same thing for me, it's just I consider humanity to be complete garbage, and that's probably why I love the art as much as I love it, because to me, art is humanity's absolute greatest expression. Even ugly art is still powerful. Even art that comes from the ugliest places in the world is powerful. Art that's sad can make us feel sad. It's just, the minute it is that you meet the artists, some of that magic, my experience has been, some of that magic disappears immediately. Because all of a sudden there's a person behind it and you realize, you know what? Ira Leuven might have had the voice of God, but he was a fucking prick. Merle Haggard was probably a prick. Charles Mingus was definitely a prick. Miles Davis was a prick. So, and it's just been that kind of experience where it's like, the art, just let it be. Let Ted Nugent be who he is. And let Stranglehold be an amazing song just as it is without having to add anything.
Yeah. I'm always afraid to meet, people that I admire sometimes because...
Me too.
I'm afraid that if they are an asshole, I feel like I've got to just toss my whole record collection. It did happen one time, and I still have a hard time listening to that band.
No, I hear you, dude, because it's the same thing for me, man. I don't want to know the artist, and the thing is when you think about it, man, they're human beings. If I was an artist and somebody was hounding me all the time, I'd tell people to fuck off for sure. Absolutely for sure. I would be a nightmare, dude. You know why I don't own a record store? Because I would kill the first customer that walks in. I have no patience for humanity. I hate all of you. So, who the fuck am I to judge these artists? It's humanity, all of us. Me included, all of us. Humanity as a race, we're doomed. We suck. We're fucking garbage. This entire planet should be hit by a fucking meteor. And the only thing that's left are the songs. And when you have fucking androids that come and they visit, android anthropologists and archaeologists, and dig it up, and they dig up an album like fucking Waylon's Greatest Hits, they're gonna say, hey, what, these humans, they were fucking swell. No, sir. What you have in your hand is art. It is the best part of humanity. The rest of us suck balls. We're fucking horrible as creatures. All right, dude, that's the way that we're gonna end. Welcome to Vinyl Junkies. This episode of Digging the Bins, where we focus on genre-specific music, this week's episode will focus on